control all of that from here.
And with you. An Avenger under my control. I can finally come out of the shadows. Using the only natural resource that the world has too much of. Girls.
This line has been drilling itself into my head since I watched Black Widow. It's so strange. It's acted and delivered in such a way that it should be a really impactful moment, but it falls so flat on its face that it's almost funny. It's so bewildering. It says so little, and yet it says so much. It's a black hole paradox of a movie moment, and I can't hold it in anymore. I have to talk about it. Black Widow, the 24th movie released in the MCU, chronologically the 16th movie in the MCU, released on November 6th, May 9th, July 9th. 2021. It's the first film in MCU's Phase 4, though several TV shows have already been released as part of Phase 4, though technically they were supposed to come out after this movie. It's also the first solo film of Scarlett Johansson's Natasha Romanoff Black Widow, who, despite being in the MCU since the third movie, hasn't had a solo film until now. None of this is really relevant to the video, it's just fun to list all the categories this movie fits into. Although it is kind of relevant because the amount of context you need to understand this movie is actually quite an annoying, tangled mess to explain, but I'll try my best. Black Widow is about the secret spy turned superhero Natasha Romanoff. She's currently on the run because of reasons when she gets wrapped up in a plot to take down the Red Room, the secret organisation she used to work for as a brainwashed spy. She reconciles with her fake spy family along the way, and they blow up a sky base and an old Russian man who says,
using the only natural resource that the world has too much of. Girls.
You're probably going to want more context than that, aren't you? So, what is the Red Room, and who is this man? Unfortunately, explaining those questions is kind of the weakest part of this movie, so we're going to have to rely on external information. The Red Room, more commonly in Marvel known as the Black Widow program, was a Russian KGB secret operation to train young girls into deadly assassins and spies. That is explicit in previous movies, but not in this one because it's 2021, and you can't be demonizing the Ruskies in your summer blockbuster anymore. It's not 2008. This man is General Dreykov. He doesn't exist. By which I mean he was made up for this movie. The comics has no man in charge of the Red Room because it's run by the KGB with not much room for individual masterminds. At least that's what the Marvel Wiki tells me. I don't read comics, okay? I'm a fraud. By making this change, putting a single man in charge of the Black Widow program, you kind of change a fundamental part of the evil. This is not the work of a shady, faceless organisation doing cruel things for what we assume to be the glory of Russia. This is the work of a shady dude with a face doing things for his benefit. That is fundamentally a different sort of story. Dreykov becomes a kind of embodiment for the entire exploitative system. I'm not making a value judgment on that, but it is a change with weird side effects. Okay, let's start unpacking that line.
Using the only natural resource that the world has too much of. Girls.
In the fiction of the movie, Dreykov and his army of goons kidnap small girls, train and brainwash them to become deadly assassins, and then send them out into the world to do his devious bidding. The question that the movie hasn't really answered up until this point is, why girls? Or rather, why only girls? And there's a lot of answers you could give to that question. I'm going to be speaking in generalities here, but bear with me. We're looking at this through the context of a program that in the fiction of the MCU has been running since at least the 50s. Women are generally smaller and more agile than men. Not generally physically as strong, but physical strength isn't a requirement for an assassin. Flexibility is. Women, especially beautiful women, are less conspicuous than men. As a culture, we're less likely to suspect a pretty woman of wrongdoing. I'm not saying that's good or fair, but it is certainly true, especially in olden times. Men are dumb and easily manipulated by sexy ladies, something a trained lady assassin could use to great advantage in a way that a male assassin couldn't. The movie doesn't give us any of these reasons. Nothing about what the widows do in the movie is gendered in any way. Mostly what we see them doing is typical action movie stuff. Rooftop chases, motorcycle chases, mosh pit beat-em-ups. None of these are really exclusive to what a woman can do. And so to explain this, we get...
Mit Hilfe der einzigen Ressource, von der es auf der Welt so viel gibt. Mädchen.
The implication being that Dreykov hates women. He thinks they're disposable. He thinks there's too much women in the world. Does he though? I mean, yes. Right? Look at this scene. Look how he gets up in Natasha's face, pushes her around, talks down to her, punches her in the face. This scene is very clearly played and acted to capture the aesthetic of a sexist, a man who thinks he's above women. Actions, though, speak louder than words, and the problem, not sure that's the correct word, but anyway, the problem is that he's never shown to exploit women in explicitly gendered ways. There's a scene earlier in the film where he forces an injured widow to kill herself, clearly demonstrating that he views them as disposable. But there's no impression that he wouldn't have done the same to a male agent. He's a ruthless monster. He doesn't seem to care about anyone. The bigger one is that the widows are very explicitly not sexualized in any way, which is a departure from even previous films in this franchise. And that's weird, right? You have a guy who's this horrible sexist and he isn't having his army of brainwashed sexy ladies walk around the skybase in skin-tight latex. Why not? I'm not saying that's what I want. That would be bad and exploitative. But, you know, he's the villain. If anyone gets a pass, it's the guy who dies in a fiery explosion at the end. If we rewind about 5 minutes, then Dreykov says something else.
These girls were trash. They are thrown out into the street. I recycle the trash. And I give them purpose. I give them a life.
See, that makes it sound like in some twisted way he cares about them, right? But that doesn't... So he's all about taking in orphans and training them to be assassins, but also he thinks women are disposable. Is anyone else seeing a contradiction here? That's why this line feels so out of place, that it comes out of nowhere. It's because Dreykov's actions, or rather the actions of the Black Widow program, aren't that sexist, all things considered. In a fucked up sort of way, they're almost empowering. These ladies are being presented as badass without being sexualized and fawned over. And we are now entering the infinite paradox that is this line. We're only one level deep. We need to go deeper. We're going full Matthew on this one. Black Widow does not exist in a vacuum. It exists in the cultural climate of 2021, a time when for the last decade the box office has been dominated by superhero movies, and yet this is only the 4th female-led superhero movie. It also exists in the era of mainstream feminist film theory, a time when we as a culture are re-examining the roles women play in, among other things, action movies. There's a call for female roles in these films that go beyond love interest, damsel, or femme fatale, and that is a call this movie is trying to answer. Part of it is also make-up work of sorts for Marvel. Early Marvel movies are often criticised by feminists specifically because of Black Widow. The problems and solutions are as follows. Problem 1. Black Widow is typically a side part to a male hero's story, with most of the arc she has focused around male heroes. This one's quite apparent if you're looking for it. Introduced in Iron Man 2, mostly partnered with Captain America and his story taking centre stage. Ultimately, even her death centres around Hawkeye and his grief. Solution 1. Real simple. Give her her own movie. Put her in the spotlight in a story that revolves around her and her origin story. Problem 2. Black Widow has always been sexualized in a way that her male counterparts haven't. Iron Man 2 spends a lot of time talking about how pretty she is, and also features, this scene. Solution 2. Make the costumes more modest, less skin tight, with focus much less on the lady's sensual form. What a creepy way to word it. But still, the movie has a similar scene of Natasha undressing, but instead of being used for titillation, it's only to showcase the bruises and scarring on her back, very explicitly not sexualized. The second one is our sticking point, because it's not just Natasha that's been made more modest, it's the whole film, the whole Black Widow identity. I'm worried how this sounds right now, so let me clarify. I'm not here to bitch and moan that the movie has less boobs in it. It's not something I even noticed until my second watch through when I was specifically looking for all this stuff. I'll go one step further. I think it's good. The film is very non-male gazy. Obviously, Scarlett Johansson is a very pretty lady, but there's no egregious beauty shots where her beauty is the point of the scene, like this. There isn't this in the film, and that's progress. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm not a prude, but this is unbalanced. Men are almost never objectified in the same way because straight men get weird and uncomfortable when guys are showcased as being hot. In rare circumstances, when men are displayed in this sort of light, there's almost always an element of physical strength involved, which, I mean, pretty hot, but it's not this. It's not a beauty shot. Instead of leveling the playing field by also having more male beauty shots, modern action movies are instead opting to remove the egregious shots of women, which is ultimately fair enough. These movies are meant to be friendly for kids, and kids don't really care either way. This more modern approach to shooting women on film has some, I think, very unintentional but very interesting consequences for the film's story, because this newfound modesty for Natasha has been applied to all the widows. We're never directed to view the widows as sexy, and I don't mean to say they're ugly, far from it, but they are explicitly unsexualized in all aspects. Their uniforms are designed to look more practical. The camera doesn't spend time lingering on the curves of their body. There's nae sultry look to be found. They are brainwashed killing machines, and that's the primary thing you're supposed to get from them. And so, we come back again with newfound context. You see, this film does want to be about overcoming gender depression. It wants you to link the exploitation of the widows to real-world events. In the opening credits, over a Nirvana cover that's much better than the original song, we see images of the young widows, men with guns opening shipping containers full of girls, lined up with sour looks. These are images designed to evoke sex trafficking operations to make the Red Room feel exploitative in an explicitly gendered way. Many things about Dreykov himself are designed to evoke the idea of a predator. People have pointed out the similarities between Dreykov and a figure like Harvey Weinstein, but these deliberate touches are at odds with the rest of the movie. They have the flavour of exploitation without ever directly or even indirectly showing it. Using the only natural resource that the world has too much of. Girls. This line symbolises the creative dichotomy of the movie, an attempt to make a movie about gendered exploitation without including any of the gendered exploitation. The bad guy doesn't respect women, but the filmmakers do. Imagine for a second a version of this film that was more risk-taking. What if it took all of those femme fatale tropes that we're all so familiar with and turned them on their head? A sexy outfit and a sultry look take on horrifying meaning when you know that the women are being controlled to do it. And isn't that exactly the issue? Male filmmakers using their attractive female actors, putting them in uncomfortable and compromising positions even if they don't want to, or it's degrading. The Harvey Weinstein allegory is so close to being perfect, but without commitment to the idea, it's just a meaningless visual. A Black Widow solo film was blocked for years because executives at Disney and Marvel believed that female-led superhero movies didn't sell, a stupid and outdated idea. What a great piece of meta-commentary this could have been. This movie had the perfect setup for what could have been a really impactful message. But that's just it, isn't it? This movie has no desire to send a message, to be a statement. All it really exists for is to sell a bunch of Black Widow action figures. I liked Black Widow. I thought it was pretty good, all things considered. Red Guardian was funny, Florence Pugh was amazing. I didn't even mind all the cartoony action stuff. But for one of the first times in the Marvel movies, I felt disappointed because I felt like this movie could have been something more. Far from the girl power, hell yeah, feminism of Captain Marvel, Black Widow had an opportunity to be a real piece of feminist art. But if you're supposed to be uncomfortable with the widow's appearance, if you're supposed to view them as proper victims of abuse, then you can't sell their action figures, can you? So instead we get...
using the only natural resource that the world has too much of. Girls.
A meaningless statement spoken by a cartoon villain. Something to give the illusion of depth where none can actually be found. I'm going to transform it. Is it though? I think we as progressives have a tendency to focus too much on the what could have been and not enough on the what is. This movie could have done more, it should have come out 5 years ago, etc, etc. And these things are true, but I think it's valuable to look at what we have now, the impact this movie has had in its own way. I sit here, I speak with confidence about feminist film theory, male gaze, allegory, and I talk about them like they're obvious. Here's the thing, most people who watch a movie do not give a fuck about any of those things. They don't even know what male gaze is. And I think that's something that a lot of us here on Pretentious Film Discourse YouTube fail to appreciate. And of course, that goes both ways.
I think it is relevant to note that in this film, and I kid you not, every single bad guy is a man.
It will become the MCU, where nearly all male characters will be destroyed and dragged down.
Kind of where we're at now. It's like an assault on beauty.
Isn't it funny how the only two male characters in this film are either portrayed as weak and pathetic or dumb and comical?
It's becoming very obvious that Marvel does not care about you unless you aren't a man.
They really did try to tone down the TNA. This is Me Too Black Widow, but you can't tone down ScarJo. That badunkadunk is gonna badunkadunk.
Well, now there's a feminist, fucking hell. Yes, this movie has caused quite the commotion with that part of the internet, with a lot of the vitriol focused on the gender flip of Taskmaster, a villain who's normally a man, a real critical make-or-break part of the movie to be sure. So important that I had no reason at all to mention it in this video. But these, let's call them critics, are a part of the bubble too. They also overanalyze movies, they just do it in an annoying, casually sexist way. An average viewer also doesn't think like them. The average viewer is not going to notice the lack of cleavage. They're not going to notice the sex trafficking allegory. They're not going to care that Taskmaster was gender flipped. They're not going to remember this line.
Using the only natural resource that the world has too much of. Girls.
They'll remember the cool prison escape scene. They'll remember the funny bit with Black Widow's sister. They'll remember cool lady superheroes. And honestly, if we step away from the bubble, if we drop the discourse about what good representation is, cool lady superheroes is in itself meaningful. I'm going to transform into a girl, and that was the Nexus event. But I guess they didn't want to get too transy with it. Because if the scene is Loki decides, I want to be a girl, turns into a girl, that's the next event, you're not supposed to do that, then the scene works fine and it does give some more malicious motivation, I think.